Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? So the New Orleans Saints are steamrolling toward the draft, and it's really not been any secret that they're spending a good amount of time and due diligence on quarterbacks in this draft class. Now, I don't doubt at all that they would take a quarterback. We've seen them take a quarterback each of the last 2 years. Of course, Haener 2 years ago, and it was Spencer Rattler last year. My feeling has not changed. I'm looking at these mid-late round quarterbacks like the nickel slots. You just keep feeding them, because if they bust, it's not a giant loss. But if you hit, awesome, you hit a jackpot. But you got to keep feeding the slot to be able to hit the jackpot. You know, you're not going all in. You're not playing the high limit tables over here like you'd be doing if you were playing around in the first round. It's why I'm not necessarily excited about the prospect of Jackson Dart at 9 overall, like Mel Kiper had in his most recent mock draft. For what it's worth, the Saints did meet with Jackson Dart this week as well. That's one of the reports that's out there. But I think more likely, if Dart's hanging around at number 40, that's appealing. Jackson Dart at number 9, not so much. I'd say the same about Quinn Ewers. Quinn Ewers, Matt Miller has him mocked to the Saints at 40. That I'd be okay with, but you better be strongly convicted that that's a guy you feel like can be your your franchise quarterback if you're going to take him at that spot. Nonetheless, I think the more likely scenario is that the New Orleans Saints, with 9 picks in this year's draft, find a quarterback where they have a strong evaluation on that player somewhere in the middle or late rounds, and they pull the trigger there if they went that route again. So they're doing their due diligence, because leave no stone unturned. If this is, in fact, going to be your last season with Derek Carr, then what's your plan after that? It could potentially be someone in this draft. Well, Mike Garafolo of NFL Media gave the update that the Saints had a private workout with Syracuse quarterback Kyle McCord.
The Saints held a private workout today with Kyle McCord up there in Syracuse. Got a really strong arm and has impressed some folks throughout the draft process. His meetings have been really good as well. So you got the Saints up there with Scott Tolzien taking a deep look at Kyle McCord, who could be, a day 2 and day 3 type of guy, depending on how this draft process goes. He's got some other visits with teams coming up, so there is significant interest in Kyle McCord. These private workouts are so important, though, because you get a chance to really kind of dictate what you want to see a guy do, and you get to see it up close and personal. So the Saints taking a close look at Kyle McCord, led the nation in passing last year for Syracuse.
4,779 yards and 34 touchdowns. Kyle McCord threw for 4,700 yards. That was an ACC single-season record. So you got a guy that's played a ton of football. Like, when you start thinking about Kyle McCord, the bio here, there's a lot to like. He was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school, signed with Ohio State. He played for 3 years at Ohio State. Over those 3 seasons, started 24 games. In his junior year, became the full-time starter. Hits the portal. Ohio State, of course, brings in Will Howard. Kyle McCord's out. Lands at Syracuse, and in that offense went kaboom. Those for 4,700, nearly 4,800 yards and 34 touchdowns. Led the country in passing. He's also got really good size. He's 6'3", 218. Didn't have the highest relative athletic score. Big blemish. But Musey did play for Ohio State. Doesn't play for him now.
He's got the history. Before. He's got the history there. It's on the side.
File it away.
Yeah.
Buckeye. I have the same feeling about Kyle McCord as I do about Spencer Rattler and Haener. Shoot your shot. But where you shoot that shot in the draft matters. So, for example, we mentioned the Saints have 9 selections. The NFL media rates McCord as a late day 2 or early day 3 prospect. He's pretty much a consensus top 5 quarterback in this draft. So it's the first 3 that everyone's talking about, with Ward, Sanders, Dart. Then it's Tyler Shuff. I never know how to say his name. I always mispronounce it. From Louisville. And Kyle McCord. Those are your top 5. So where are we talking? The Saints have 9 picks in the draft. They have the 9th overall pick, as we know. I pray they don't use the 9th pick on a quarterback, unless if Sanders follows them at 9. If Shedeur Sanders is there at 9, I'd be good with it. But after that, you got the 40th overall pick. That's round 2. You've got a couple of picks in round 3 and a couple of picks in round 4. Remember, you get Washington's 3 and 4 this year from the Lattimore trade. So you got 2 third-round picks, 2 fourth-round picks, a 6 and a 7. So, if you were talking about using one of your third-round picks, like let's say the pick you got from Washington, which is 93 overall. It's the end of round 3. And you make your pick at 1, maybe you get a cornerback, maybe you get an edge rusher, maybe it's Tyler Warren, the tight end. Like let's say you get one of the top players in the draft at 9. Awesome. And then you use your second-round pick and you're able to fill with a guy who maybe you had a first-round grade on that dropped in around 2. And then you use the 71st pick as well. And then you're sitting there in round 3, and one of these quarterbacks is on the board. Maybe a guy like Kyle McCord's on the board, and you like him a lot, and you want to pull the trigger. I'm good with that. The other thing I'll remind you is we marked the tape on Thursday. I will hold true to this. The New Orleans Saints are not going to use all 9 selections in this draft. They're not going to pay 9 draft picks, and they don't have 9 roster spots available for 9 draft picks to make it in addition to your UDFAs. So it's always been the Saints' approach under Mickey Loomis that they're going to package picks and move up to get players they like. Instead of being patient, waiting for the draft to come to them and acquiring more assets, they're aggressive and move up. So I don't think they're going to use 9 picks. I think it's plausible you could see a situation where maybe they make those first 3 picks and then one of the quarterbacks they like is still floating around there early in round 3, and they take their second, third-round pick and maybe their fourth-round pick, package it, move up a few spots, whatever it might be, to get the quarterback that you want. That wouldn't surprise me at all, and I'd be okay with that approach because I know you're not going to use 9 picks. 9 guys aren't going to make this team. So if you're strategic about where you get aggressive and move up in the draft to find a player that you really like that can make your team and be an impact guy, I'd be good with that. I think when I said I have the same feeling about McCord as I do with Rattler and Haener, it's the whole shoot your shot. It's the nickel slot, right? But the higher you go in the draft, the more you're risking because, think about what you've been able to do in round 3. Alvin Kamara was a round 3. Trey Hendrickson was a round 3 pick. You found value in day 2, a lot of value in day 2. You've seemingly found more success. Michael Thomas was a day 2 pick. Marcus Williams was a second-round pick. You found great value in round 2, maybe even more so than some of the first-round busts that you've had from Peyton Turner and Trevor Penning and Marcus Davenport, and we could run down the list, Stephon Anthony. So all that to say, if you address needs at the top of the draft, then you want to package picks to move up in day 2 to get a quarterback, I'd be good with it. The NFL profile on McCord, though, is that he is good backup with potential to develop into a starter. And that's probably what's keeping him, maybe late day 2, early day 3, as opposed to a guy that would be in the first round of the draft. But I think we're having a very different, the higher you go in the draft, though, we're having a very different conversation like when we talk about Quinn Ewers. Again, I like Quinn Ewers, but I like Quinn Ewers an awful lot when we're talking about him as an early day 3 pick, which is where we've seen some of the slots. Matt Miller put out his mock draft and had Quinn Ewers as the second-round pick at 40 overall. I don't love that as much. If we're talking about Kyle McCord, late day 2, early day 3, back of the 3rd round, top of the 4th round, I like Kyle McCord in that spot. Not so much at 40 overall. But really, the other question you have to ask if you're the New Orleans Saints and you're considering one of these players, it's are you ready to cut bait with either Jake Haener or Spencer Rattler? Because you are going into this year with Derek Carr on your roster, and you're not going to carry 4. So you're not going to carry Carr, Rattler, Haener, and your draft pick. And the Saints tried a few years ago with Ian Book, if you remember, after they used a 4th-round pick on Book. In his second year, they waived him with the intention of signing him to the practice squad. Well, the Philadelphia Eagles signed him to the active roster. So you used a 4th-round pick on a guy that was on your roster for 1 year and then was gone. So you got to be mindful of that. Like, would you value someone like Kyle McCord more than Rattler or Haener? And if we're being honest, it's Haener, right? I mean, Rattler's the guy that got the opportunity to start last year. You're going to keep Rattler. Haener would be the guy that you'd probably let go to bring in another young guy if that's the path that you went. So it would kind of be weighing that as well. Are you okay cutting bait with Jake Haener at this point in his career after a couple of seasons to give another young guy a shot to come up through the system? Perhaps. And if that's where they fall after these workouts and interviews, I'd be good with it. Because as I'm going to continue to say, it's the nickel slots, y'all. You got to keep feeding them. You're going to bust. You're going to bust. You're going to bust. You're going to bust. But you're waiting on the jackpot. You're waiting on the Dak. You're waiting on the Kirk Cousins. You're waiting on Jalen Hurts was round 2. You're waiting on Russ in round 3. Like, you're waiting on that jackpot. And you can't hit the jackpot if you don't keep feeding the slot. So low risk, keep feeding the slot, keep drafting quarterbacks until you hit on one. Unless you're going to go to the top of the draft and decide someone's going to be your franchise. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.